response is the member from Kitchener-Waterloo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with mixed feelings to talk about the 2016 United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities. New Democrats have long supported and continue to support full accessibility for all. People with disabilities have a fundamental right to full and equal access to participation in our society. That includes employment and housing and participating fully in public life. And we know that 1 in 7 Ontarians identify as having a disability, and as our population ages, it is more important than ever that we work to create a more inclusive province. This Liberal government committed to do more, and they must follow through on their commitments. Inclusion includes ensuring that everyone has access to the workforce. Nearly half of all adults who have a disability are not currently participating in the workforce due to barriers that they face, 50%. We must challenge ourselves as a province to improve employment opportunities and career pathways that lead to stable, well-paying employment for people with disabilities. The government should lead in this regard. I've heard the minister talk about a culture shift. That culture shift should happen here in the People's House. We enthusiastically supported the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act 10 years ago. We supported it then, and we support it today. New Democrats, in consultation with David Leposki at the AODA Alliance, continue to raise the issue of compliance and enforcement. In fact, there is now a group of community organizations that are advocating for an education accessibility standard across Ontario. They are advocating for this because too many students with special needs face enormous obstacles to receiving the education that they should be receiving as Ontarians. Not only do students with special needs face accessibility hurdles, like access to playground equipment, smart boards that aren't legible, or classroom doors that can't be opened, these same barriers to education contribute to the high unemployment rate among Ontarians with disabilities. And I was very proud that our member from London West, Peggy Sattler, welcomed the creation of a local chapter of the AODA Alliance. With a brief statement, she said, "While the government's recent agreement to develop a health standard and accessibility is welcome, another standard is meaningless if it is not enforced. There has been no commitment on the development of an essential standard for education, both K-12 and post-secondary." So we can do better, and we must do better, Mr. Speaker. Concerns about lack of accessibility were a central part of the Ontario NDP's critique of the 2015 Para-Pan Games. We know that there were para-athletes who could only gain access to less than 20% of the businesses with less than 20 employees in the GTA, and yet this government proudly trumpeted the fact that those games were the most accessible in history. Ontario's NDP has consistently raised AODA compliance issues and will continue to do so. Percy Hatfield, the MPP for Windsor-Tecumseh, introduced a PMB titled Municipal Action on Accessibility for Persons with Disabilities Act in 2015, following consultation with the AODA. Despite its commitments, this government requires pressure from the opposition to follow through on what they have said that they would do, but it doesn't inspire confidence, Mr. Speaker. However, I was inspired to create a petition calling for the expansion of AODA service animal protection in 2015 after many constituents in my riding of Kitchener-Waterloo reached out to my office to share their experiences of indignity related to their service animals. And while the AODA represents a good first step, those who rely on service dogs or other accessibility accommodations in order to live dignified lives require the legislation to be consistently enforced. And while the throne speech was to act as a chance for this Liberal government to hit the restart button, it is disappointing that we heard absolutely nothing about accessibility and disability rights. Thousands of people in this province continue to struggle to access services in ways that their able-bodied counterparts do not. This is discrimination in its clearest form. If this government truly cared about full inclusion, they would initiate oversight for their own act, Mr. Speaker. Ultimately, the United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities is about inclusion. Inclusion should not be optional in the province of Ontario. Everyone in Ontario deserves the right to feel like they belong in any building, in any business, in any workplace. With inclusion, everyone can live their full potential, and that's what we need to strive for in Ontario. And we have a lot of work to go forward, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.